I moved into this cute house a few nights ago. I thought it was the perfect spot for a fresh start after my breakup. I was hoping to find some peace and a boost of inspiration for my graphic design work. At first, everything seemed normal. I settled in and got to work, but the quiet felt a bit too heavy. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like something is off. On the third night, while I was wrapping up a project, I heard a light tapping against my bedroom wall. I thought it was just the plumbing or something. I ignored it at first, but the tapping grew louder and more random. It was hard to concentrate. The next few days, the tapping changed into whispers. I wasn't sure if I was imagining it or if they were real. They seemed to call out to me sometimes, like they wanted to pull me closer. I even thought I heard laughter. It made my skin crawl. I would pause my work, staring around at the empty room, feeling chills run down my back. Then there was my neighbor, an old woman always sitting on her porch staring at me. Every time I caught her gaze, it sent shivers down my spine. Did she know something about this house? About what happened here? One night, I woke up from a strange dream. I was back in the house, but it was crowded with shadows. They were all there, stretching out their hands towards me. I couldn't move. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. I woke up in a panic, soaked in sweat, feeling my heart racing. I grabbed my phone to check the time. Just then, the whispers came back. They were closer now. I was frozen, unable to move. I wanted to cover my ears, but I couldn't. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe it was my mind playing tricks on me. Then I heard something shift in the hallway. My skin prickled. I turned my head slowly. The door was slightly open. It could have been the wind, or maybe it wasn't. I held my breath, watching the door. I didn't know how long I waited. That's when I saw a figure standing there. It was just outside the door, staring at me. I called out softly, "Hello?" No answer came. The figure leaned closer, its face still hidden. "Are you okay?" I asked, feeling sick. I thought it spoke, but I couldn't make out the words. I knew I had to run, but my body wouldn't move. I turned away quickly. In an instant, the figure was gone, just vanished like the whispers that had haunted my nights. I lay there, heart racing. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. All I knew was that I was alone in a house that felt anything but empty. The sun rose the next morning, and I was thankful for the light breaking through the curtains. It felt like a small relief after the darkness of the night. But the whispers had pierced through more than just my sleep. They were lodged in my mind. I needed to push past this. I had designs to finish and a life to rebuild after all. But as I moved about the house, I realized that the echoes of the night clung to the walls. I decided to try and distract myself. I pulled out my laptop and settled at the dining table, intent on getting some work done. But the tapping returned. This time it was rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. I glanced around, hoping it would fade, but it only grew louder. I was tempted to look at the wall, but I resisted. I focused on my screen, determined to ignore it. After a while, I decided I needed fresh air. I packed my bag and went for a walk in the neighborhood, hoping to clear my mind and maybe talk to the old woman on her porch. I approached her house, her weathered face lifting when she saw me. "Good morning," I said cautiously. She nodded slowly, her eyes scanning my face. "You moved in, didn't you?" "Yeah, just a few nights ago." Her expression darkened. "It's been quiet, hasn't it?" I shuddered at the truth in her words. I didn't respond, but pressed her for answers. "Do you know anything about the house? It feels different." Her lips quivered as if she were weighing her words. "Some houses come with stories. Be careful what you listen to." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, stories?" "Whispers, they can be dangerous," she said quietly. "Trust your gut." I hurried back home, the old woman's words echoing in my mind. I didn't want to believe her, but the tapping and whispers wouldn't leave me alone. As I entered the house, I reached for the light, almost feeling the shadows creep closer. The moment I sat down, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my friend checking in. I started to respond but froze when I heard a loud crash from the hallway. It sounded like something had fallen. My heart raced as I dropped my phone and rose slowly from my chair. I crept toward the hallway, peering into the dim light. "Hello? Is anyone there?" I called out, suppressing the tremor in my voice. The air felt thicker. I approached the source of the sound with cautious steps, my heart pounding against my chest. That's when I saw it. A picture frame lay shattered on the floor, the glass glinting ominously, but the photo inside, a family portrait, was untouched. I crouched down to examine it. The faces looked vaguely familiar. I felt a thrill of recognition. But the moment I touched the frame, a cold breeze brushed past me, sending a shiver down my spine. I whipped around, but no one was there. The whispers surged back louder than ever, swirling in my mind. I needed to leave, to escape whatever this was. My thoughts raced. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something I was missing, a piece of the puzzle that tied me to this house and its haunting whispers. Something was waiting for me to discover it. I had to know more. I stepped back from the picture, and that's when I noticed it, an envelope tucked behind the broken frame. My fingers trembled as I reached for it. What I found inside would lead me deeper into this mystery than I ever thought possible. I carefully pulled the envelope from behind the frame, my heart racing with anticipation. The paper felt aged, the corners worn. I opened it slowly, trying to ignore the anxiety creeping back in. Inside was a letter, written in elegant yet shaky handwriting. "Dear occupant," it began. "If you are reading this, you must be aware of the whispers. They grow louder when you are alone, and they feed on your fears. I tried to resist them, but eventually, they took everything from me. Please leave while you still can." Chills ran down my spine as I read the last line. The note sent my mind into a spiral. What had happened to the person before me? I glanced around the hallway, feeling the weight of the silence, the whispers. What did they want? I turned the letter over, hoping for more information. On the back, a single date was scrawled, November 15th, 1981. It seemed like a strange thing to remember, a marker of a tragedy. I had to know what happened on that date. I dropped the letter back into the envelope and shoved it into my pocket. I needed answers. Maybe my neighbor could help. I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside, determined to find out what haunted this house. As I walked briskly to her porch, unease clung to me. Each step felt heavier, as if the ground beneath me was urging me to turn back. But I pushed forward, hoping for guidance. When I reached her, she was sitting in her usual spot, knitting silently. She looked up as I approached, her expression guarded. "You're back," she noted, her tone flat. "I found something," I said, feeling the urgency claw at me. I pulled out the envelope and handed it to her. "Do you know anything about this?" She examined it closely, her eyebrows knitting together. "You shouldn't have touched that." I felt a jolt of fear. "Why? What does it mean?" "It means you're in danger. You must leave before it's too late," she said, her voice trembling. "Too late for what?" I pressed, the feeling of dread thickening in the air. A loud crash echoed from my house, slicing through the tension. The ground beneath my feet seemed to shudder. The old woman's eyes widened. "You must go," she urged, standing up. Panic surged through me. I turned and sprinted back, my heart pounding. The whispers escalated, swirling in my mind. As I reached the front door, I paused, glancing back. The woman was calling after me, but I couldn't hear her words over the voices growing louder. The moment I stepped inside, the air shifted. The house felt alive, vibrating with energy. I felt drawn toward the hallway, even as instinct screamed at me to escape. And that's when I saw him, an outline standing in the shadows at the end of the hallway. I had no idea who he was, but the way he stared sent a chill through me. "Who are you?" I whispered, feeling frozen in place. My breath hitched and the whispers surged, merging into a deafening roar. I had to know what I was up against. I stepped forward, ready to confront whatever had been waiting in the dark. As I took a cautious step forward, the figure shifted slightly in the shadows. It felt like time had stopped. My mind raced, weighing my options: run or find out what he wanted. But there was a strange pull, urging me closer. "Who are you?" I repeated, my voice fighting to stay steady. The whispers roared in my ears, drowning out everything else. "What do you want?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped into the dim light spilling from the nearby window. I recoiled slightly. His face was gaunt, eyes sunken, and a haunting sadness hung about him. "I need you to understand," he finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "They will come for you." I blinked, trying to comprehend. "Who will come?" The question spilled out before I could hold it back. I felt like I was exchanging breaths with a ghost. "The voices," he said, glancing toward the hallway with a mix of fear and regret. "They're not just whispers, they have a purpose. They feed off your fear, and once they sense you're vulnerable, they will take you." My heart raced. "What do you mean, take me?" For a moment the hallway seemed to tremble, the shadows swirling around the corners as if alive. The whispers grew louder, merging into a haunting melody. I felt the walls closing in. "They took everything from me," he continued, his voice cracking. I tried to warn her too. "Just like I'm warning you now, leave, you can't stay here." I shook my head, resisting the urge to break and run. "I can't just leave, not without answers." In response, he took a step closer. "You need to know. November 15th, 1981. That's when it started for me. Everything changed that day. You must learn the truth before it's too late." Before I could ask what happened on that date, a loud crash vibrated through the house again. My heart sank as I turned to look. Something was moving in the dark behind me. The whispers intensified, filling the air with chaos. "Get out now," the man yelled, panic coloring his tone. But before I could process his words, a shadow lunged at me from the darkness. I stumbled back, hitting the wall. The figure began to coalesce, formed by the shadows, a swirling mass with a shape that felt familiar, yet wrong. "Leave!" he shouted again. Then everything went dark. I couldn't see or hear anything except the deafening sound of my own heartbeat. I felt trapped in a void, and all thoughts of fear slid away. I didn't even know which way was up or down. Suddenly a blinding light flickered back to life. I gasped, finding myself on the floor of my living room. The figure gone, the whispers reduced to a distant murmur. But the letter from before was still there, open before me on the coffee table. And something new was written at the bottom. "You have to decide." My pulse quickened. I may have escaped the darkness for now, but I knew I couldn't ignore the mystery any longer. I had to uncover what happened on November 15th, 1981. Otherwise, I'd be left behind, too. As I stared at that line, a question locked itself in my mind. What should I decide? And could I even trust myself? I sat on the floor, the letter trembling in my hands. The air felt thick, like a storm brewing just outside. I needed answers, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in over my head. The man's words echoed in my mind, and that date, November 15th, 1981, felt like a key to a door I wasn't sure I wanted to open. I took a deep breath and stood up, pacing around the living room. I noticed the window across the room was slightly ajar. It creaked in the wind, and for a moment, I thought I saw the shadows dancing in the corner. I pulled the window shut, but I couldn't escape the feeling that they were watching me. As the sun began to set, I knew I had to act fast. I grabbed my phone and searched for anything linked to that date. With each article I scrolled through about disappearances, hauntings, or strange occurrences in the area. My unease grew. The internet was a treasure trove of unsettling stories, but nothing seemed to relate directly to my situation. Frustrated, I flopped onto the couch, and that's when I noticed the old family photo on the wall. My grandparents smiling brightly on what looked like a family trip. I hadn't paid much attention to it before, but there was something familiar about the venue. Suddenly it hit me. The same park where they took the photo was mentioned in one of the online articles. Something awful happened there in 1981. I grabbed the letter again, feeling the urgency that accompanied the man's warning. I needed to go there. Just then a noise snapped me out of my focus. It was a low thud. My skin prickled as I glanced toward the hallway. I swallowed hard and stood, slowly leaving the living room. Each step felt heavier, weighted with the fear the man had warned me about. As I made my way to the source, I found nothing in the hallway. I hesitated, listening hard. The whispers were back, subtle but insistent. I felt like they meant to lead me somewhere, or maybe they were just looking for a way to take hold of my mind. Then out of the corner of my eye, I caught a movement in the shadows. It slid like a wisp of smoke, vanishing behind a closed door. My heart pounded as I approached. With a shaky hand, I reached for the knob. Just as I turned it, I heard a voice, a low, guttural laugh that sent chills down my spine. I pulled back, gasping. Was I imagining things? The hair on my neck stood up, and sensing danger, I stepped back. But what if I didn't find out what was behind that door? The man had told me to run, but I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was hidden there was tied to my decision. In that moment, I realized I had to choose. Open the door and confront whatever lay within, or leave before the darkness engulfed me again. My breath quickened as I thought of the old park, the pictures and the man's fearful eyes. I took a deep breath, heart racing. I have to know, I whispered to myself. With a surge of determination, I pushed the door open. That's when I saw it. In the dimly lit room, I felt my breath hitch as my eyes adjusted to the darkness. There, barely illuminated by the flickering bulb above, was a small, ornate box resting on a dust-covered table. It felt out of place, like an artifact that had been forgotten long ago. The laughter echoed in my mind as I approached, each careful step heightening the tension in the air. I reached for the box, its wood cool and smooth under my fingertips. Something about it felt familiar, like a piece of my past I didn't remember quite yet. I lifted the lid slowly. Inside, I found a collection of items, old photographs, a rusted key, and a delicate silver locket. My heart raced as I recognized the faces in the photographs. They were my family, but from years before I was born. I picked up the silver locket, its chain tangled and worn. I opened it, half expecting it to reveal a picture of a long-lost relative or maybe something more sinister. Instead, I found a small, faded note tucked inside. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. It contained a single sentence, "Find us before the darkness finds you." What did that mean? Who was meant to be found? My thoughts raced, tangling with the laughter still echoing in my mind. My initial curiosity turned to dread. I could feel the room closing in around me, shadows stretching toward my light. I snapped the locket shut, throwing it back into the box as if it sparked a fire. Then from the corner of my eye, something shifted. I glanced up just in time to see a flicker of movement. A figure? I couldn't be sure. Panic welled inside me, and I slammed the box shut, the noise echoing sharply. I turned to flee but paused. I had to know if someone was really there. I called out, my voice wavering. "Hello, is someone here?" My heart thundered in my chest as silence enveloped me. I strained my ears, but the only sound was my own breath. Maybe it was just my imagination, playing tricks in the dim light. I stepped toward the door, ready to bolt. Then a whisper reached my ear, clear and cold. "You shouldn't have come here." I froze, an ice-cold shiver racing down my spine. I spun around, but there was nothing. Just the darkness pressing in. I needed to leave, fast. The fear consumed me. The laughter, the whispers, the ghostly message, they were all connected. Suddenly, the door slammed shut. The sound reverberated through the room like a thunderclap. My heart raced as I yanked on the knob, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped. Panic surged, and I turned back to the box. The rusted key glinted in the faint light. I had to find a way out. With no other option, I grabbed the key, hoping it had a purpose. The air thickened around me, and I felt the pressure of unseen eyes piercing through the darkness. Just then, the laughter returned, louder, angrier. It echoed through the walls, vibrating against my eardrums. I could feel dread settling in my stomach. I had to figure out what it wanted before I lost my mind entirely. I turned back to the box, desperation clawing at my chest. "What do you want from me?" I shouted into the shadows, but the only answer I got was silence, and deep down, I wondered if I had already lost. I yanked the key from the box, my heart pounding. It felt heavy in my hand, as if it had secrets of its own. I looked at the door. Should I try the key there? A part of me wanted to scream for help, but I knew no one would hear me. I was completely alone. Just as I reached for the door again, a shift in the atmosphere halted me. The laughter morphed into a chorus of sinister whispers, circling around me, rising and falling like a wave. Leave, now, before it's too late. I shook my head, pushing back the panic. Stop it! My voice trembled, bouncing back at me from the walls. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus. This is just a trick. Just my mind. I stepped back, debating my next move. My eyes darted to the box again. I felt drawn to it as if it was beckoning me. The photographs, the locket, the faded note. They were pieces of something bigger, something important. I needed to understand. I placed the key back on the table, unwilling to abandon it yet. I approached the box cautiously, grouping my resolve. As I lifted the lid again, the shadows pressed in closer, coiling around me. I rifled through the items, searching for anything else that might provide a clue. Suddenly, the door rattled, the knob twisting as if someone were trying to force it open from the other side. I jumped back, a small gasp escaping my lips. Panic surged again. Who was there? Let me out, I shouted, rushing to the door and pulling on the knob with all my strength. But it was stuck fast, the wood groaning against my weight. The rattling stopped, leaving behind an odd stillness. The whispers faded, but the air felt charged, thick with anticipation. Then everything changed. A loud crash erupted from the far corner of the room. I spun around, heart racing, to see a small window had shattered. Glass littered the floor, reflecting glimmers of light like scattered stars. I took one step toward the mess, but hesitation rooted me in place. Did the dark know I was here? Was it angry at me for snooping? A sense of dread pooled in my stomach as I felt a chill brush against my neck. Come find us. The whisper was softer now, almost pleading. I took a deep breath, willing myself to act. If I didn't figure this out, I might never escape. I glanced at the window and the shadows lurking at the edges of the room. The silver locket rattled in the box as though urging me to pick it up again. That's when I saw it, a glimmering shape beyond the glass. My first instinct was to run, but curiosity held me steady. A figure emerged from the darkness outside, face obscured, only an outline visible against the dimness. It pointed toward me. I swallowed hard, frozen in fear. Who are you? I whispered, my voice barely escaping my throat. Before I could brace myself, a scream tore through the air, a piercing sound that shattered the tense silence. It felt like a warning, and any sense of safety evaporated around me. I needed to know what was happening, but now I had a new reason to be terrified. I turned back to the box, blood roaring in my ears. I had to make a choice. I hesitated. The locket in the box felt like a weight on my heart. I wanted to reach for it, but the eerie figure outside loomed large in my mind. My instincts screamed at me to retreat, to find some kind of escape. But I couldn't just ignore the strange glow beyond the jagged window. Who are you? I shouted again, louder this time. The figure stood still, unmoving, the shadow swallowing much of its shape. I felt foolish, waiting for a response that might never come. I stepped back, glancing at the door one more time. It was still locked. What if this, or whoever this was, could help me? Or was I walking right into a trap? My heart thundered. The whispers echoed again in my mind. Come find us. They pulled at me, urging me toward the unknown. The shards of glass crunched under my weight as I moved closer to the window. It felt like a portal to something beyond the darkened room. I leaned in, trying to see beyond the outline, wishing for clarity. Suddenly I felt a draft, cold and biting, that made me shiver. My breath fogged the glass and I wiped it with my sleeve. That's when I noticed something else. A faint shimmer in the figure's hand. Something metallic that glinted in the moonlight. Wait, what do you want? I called across the distance, my voice sounding weak against the thudding silence of the room. The figure lifted its arm slightly, the shimmer intensifying. It could have been a weapon, or maybe something more benign. but my gut sank. Then it moved. Fast. I barely had time to react before it lunged toward the window, breaking through the remnants of glass. I stepped back, heart racing, as it reached for me. Panic surged within me, and I instinctively grabbed the silver locket. I couldn't let go. I needed it with me. "Stay back," I shouted, but it didn't stop. The figure, still shadowy but more defined now, leaped into the room, landing on the floor with a low thud that shook the very air around me. I looked for an escape. The only exit was still behind me, and the figure was cornering me in. It moved closer, and I saw its face, a mix of shadow and a familiar sorrow. It felt like a specter from the past. "No," I cried, clutching the locket to my chest. It felt warm against my skin, as if responding to the fear pinning me to the wall. "Who are you?" I could barely keep the tremor from my voice. But before I could get an answer, a loud bang echoed through the room. Everything shook violently and the lights flickered. I glanced over my shoulder and gasped. The door had burst open, and in the gasp of surprise, I felt the figure's cold breath on my neck. "Find us," it whispered again, voice now imbued with urgency. I wheeled around, breathless. My terror must have shown on my face. "What do you mean? Who are you?" In that split second, the world darkened around us, and the whispers turned into a deafening roar. The silver locket glimmered one last time before everything went black. I felt myself falling, the floor vanishing beneath me as the darkness enveloped me whole. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I could sense it was going to change everything. I awoke with a start, my heart racing. It felt like I had been pulled through a heavy mist. My surroundings came into focus, and I was no longer in the dim room with the figure. I lay on a cold, hard floor surrounded by darkness, except for a faint light flickering in the distance. I pushed myself up, rubbing my eyes and trying to make sense of what just happened. The air felt thick, charged in a way that sent shivers crawling down my spine. As I stood, I caught a glimpse of the locket still in my grasp, glowing softly. It was as if it was alive, pulsing with a rhythm that matched my frantic heartbeat. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small in the stillness. The light flickered again, brighter this time, almost like a beacon. Part of me wanted to turn back, to hide, but curiosity pulled me forward. What if there was more to discover? What if this was a chance to uncover the truth behind everything? I stepped cautiously, each footfall echoing in the empty space. The flickering light seemed to beckon me, leading me deeper into the unknown. I squinted at the shadows, searching for any sign of the figure I'd encountered. "Are you here?" I whispered, my nervousness growing. Suddenly the light shifted, casting eerie shapes on the walls. It revealed a door, heavy and ornate, but slightly ajar. My breath caught in my throat. Was the figure waiting for me on the other side? Was it friend or foe? I hesitated again. Memories of the whispering voice flooded back. "Find us." I remembered the sorrow on the figure's face, and a surge of determination washed over me. I had to know. I had to confront whatever was behind that door. I pushed it open, the creaking sound piercing the silence. Inside, I found a room that was both familiar and foreign, filled with old furniture draped in white sheets. The air felt colder, and the energy shifted, as if time itself was holding its breath. That's when I saw it. A mirror on the far wall, but it was no ordinary mirror. Instead of reflecting my image, it showed a scene unfolding in another place. I saw a younger version of myself standing in a sunlit room, laughter ringing through the air. It felt like a memory, but not one I could easily place. "Why am I seeing this?" I muttered, stepping closer. The comforting glow of the locket dimmed, and I steadied my breath. If this was a part of my past, why was it coming back now? "Back. Find us." Echoed in my mind again, but the voice felt different. It was softer, filled with a longing that twisted my heart. I reached out to touch the mirror, and just as my fingers brushed the surface, the room plunged into darkness. Panic surged through me, but I remembered the figure. It was still out there, somewhere in the shroud of shadows. "Where are you?" I shouted, but only silence answered back. I felt the walls close in, and just as I turned to flee, I heard a whisper close behind me. "Help us." I froze, a chill climbing my spine. Something was waiting for me to discover. I had to understand what it wanted, or risk being lost forever in the darkness. How could this getting worse? I had to find the answers, not only for me, but for the figures haunting my past. I stumbled back, heart racing as the whisper echoed in my ears. "Help us." It felt layered, as if the words were spoken by multiple voices, woven together in a suffocating mesh of sorrow. The atmosphere pressed down on me like a vice. I needed to know who they were and why their cries haunted me. I glanced back at the mirror, its surface now dark and unreflective, a mere shadow of what it had been moments ago. But I wasn't ready to leave without answers. Gathering my courage, I reached again for the locket, feeling its warmth pulse against my palm. "I will help you," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. "Just show me how." In response, the shadows seemed to ripple. I took a step forward, the darkness thickening as if it recognized my intention. Suddenly, the room around me shifted, light flickering back into existence. I found myself in a vast, dimly lit hallway. The air was cool, and the walls lined with portraits whispered forgotten stories. I turned slowly, taking in the sight of faded faces staring down at me, their expressions just out of reach. Among them, one face stood out, a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Without thinking, I lifted the locket. It was warm, almost vibrating in my hand as I approached the portrait. My fingers traced the outline of the woman's face, and I felt an inexplicable connection pulsing through me. "Who are you?" I whispered. "Find us." The collective voices swirled again, louder this time, echoing through the hall like a mournful song. The urgency coursed through my veins. I continued down the hallway, feeling the whispers guiding me, leading me to another door at the end. My heart pounded louder than ever as I reached for the handle. With a deep breath, I swung the door open. Inside, a room awaited me, bathed in soft light that glimmered like hope on the edge of despair. Objects were scattered across the floor, dolls, toys, and old trinkets suffused with a sense of warmth, yet they felt unbearably heavy with loss. Amidst the clutter was a small table, papers strewn across it, and a single photo in the center. I approached it cautiously. It was a picture of the same woman from the hallway, but this time, she cradled 2 young children in her arms. Their eyes sparkled with life, so vibrant they reached out from the photograph. A sense of recognition gripped me, and I gasped, realizing the truth. This was my family. "Why were you taken?" I breathed, feeling a lump form in my throat. A frosty chill curled around my spine, mirroring the suffocating weight in the air. I turned to face the shadows gathering near the door. The laughter echoing from before returned, dark and twisted. "Leave," they hissed, their voices a cacophony of anguish. I wanted to run, but the image of those innocent faces held me in place. "I can't leave you." In that moment of reckless determination, I clasped the locket tightly. "You need to tell me what happened. Is this about November 15th, 1981? The shadows flared at the mention of the date, swirling as if caught in a storm. "Help us, before they return." I felt the ground beneath me tremble as a deep rumble echoed through the space. The walls shuddered, and distant laughter morphed into anguished cries, reverberating through my soul. Panic rose like bile, and I stumbled back. What can I do? But my plea slipped away into the darkness as shadows began to swirl around me, enveloping me like a fog. I saw figures emerging, distorted specters with eyes like pits of despair. "Join us!" They beckoned, and I felt their touch curling around my heart like vines, squeezing tightly. It was then that I noticed the children in the photograph. Their cries mingled with the darkness. "No! I won't let you take me!" I shouted, fighting against the encroaching shadows as the figures closed in, hungry for fear. I grasped the locket, feeling its heat radiate like fire as I shouted, "Find us!" A blinding light erupted from my grasp, piercing through the gloom. The shadows recoiled, howling in rage as the warmth of the locket illuminated the room, freeing me from their grasp. The room began to shift violently, the walls closing in around me, and then darkness. I opened my eyes, gasping for breath, sprawled on the cold floor of my living room. The sun streamed through the window, bathing everything in a golden glow. I felt dazed and disoriented, wrestling with the memory of what just happened. Yet the whispers, they had faded, replaced instead by a serene silence. I stood up, feeling the weight of the locket still clutched in my palm. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, although a lingering chill clung to the corners like shadows refusing to disappear. I stepped tentatively outside, and the air was fresh, invigorating. As I looked around, I saw my neighbor sitting on her porch, her gaze distant, yet her expression softened when our eyes met. "You're here," she said, a gentle smile breaking through her earlier wariness. "I don't know if they're free, but I think I finally know their story," I replied, feeling the gravity of the experience pull at my heart. That's when I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, a shimmer of light deep in the shadows of my front yard. I turned, but all I found was emptiness. The questions began to rise again, swirling into a fog of uncertainty. Had they truly been set free? Were they still here, lingering, waiting for a bond that felt unbreakable, yet distant? As I walked back inside, a weary smile hesitated on my lips. The whispers might have receded, but deep down, I knew the echoes of that night would haunt me forever. I breathed in the warmth of the sun, feeling the light warming my skin, remembering the faces of my family, tethered not just to a house but to the stories left lingering in the shadows. I stepped through the door, still grappling with the weight of the unknown. It was a new beginning, yet there would always be questions unanswered, a mystery woven into the very fabric of my existence. I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever truly escape those whispers, but mostly I just keep creating, hoping that one day I'll finally find the answer.